Commodus the Gladiator Emperor. Rome's ultimate disaster. When you hear the word emperor, what comes to mind? A ruler in a golden palace? A commander leading vast armies? A figure of wisdom and power? Well, Commodus was none of those. Instead, he was the gladiator emperor, a man who wanted to swap his imperial robes for a tunic and a wooden sword, strutting around the arena while tens of thousands cheered. But here is the catch. They weren't cheering out of love. They were cheering because they had no choice. This is the outrageous, bizarre, and ultimately tragic story of Commodus, the Roman emperor who wanted to be a superstar gladiator and destroyed himself in the process. From heir to emperor. Commodus was born in 161 CE, the son of Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's most respected emperors and a symbol of wisdom and Stoic philosophy. Young Commodus grew up surrounded by philosophers, generals, and statesmen, but none of it rubbed off. Where Marcus Aurelius was thoughtful and disciplined, Commodus was spoiled, lazy, and hungry for attention. When he became emperor in 180 CE, people hoped he would grow into the role. Instead, Commodus turned Rome into his personal playground. The emperor who wanted to be a gladiator. Most emperors ruled from palaces, commanding armies, and passing laws. Commodus? He wanted the roar of the crowd, the thrill of the fight, and the adoration of the masses, not as a ruler, but as a gladiator. At first, it might have seemed like an eccentric hobby. After all, the arena was the heart of Roman entertainment, and gladiators were adored celebrities. But soon, Commodus' obsession spiraled into something darker and much more dangerous. Rigged fights and fake glory. Commodus didn't just watch the games, he stepped into the arena himself. Clad in flashy armor and armed with specially made weapons, Commodus fought beasts, gladiators, and even wounded soldiers. But here's the catch: no one was allowed to fight back. The gladiators he faced were ordered to lose or submit. Sometimes they were armed with fake weapons or none at all. Commodus always won, not because of skill, but because of raw imperial power. He even charged the city of Rome enormous sums for each of his arena performances. Essentially, Commodus was draining the empire's treasury to fund his personal fantasy career as a gladiatorial champion. The people's reaction at first, some Romans were entertained. Watching the emperor kill wild animals or pretend to defeat famous fighters was, at the very least, a spectacle. But over time, admiration turned to embarrassment and then to disgust. Commodus saw himself as a living god. He declared himself the reincarnation of Hercules, parading through Rome dressed in lion skins, carrying a club, and posing for statues as the mythical hero. Coins were minted with his image as Hercules. He renamed months after himself. He even wanted to rename Rome Colonia Commodiana, the colony of Commodus. For many Romans, this was no longer entertainment. It was humiliation. The downfall begins behind the scenes. The empire was falling apart. While Commodus played gladiator, political corruption spread like wildfire. The Senate was sidelined. Competent administrators were replaced by cronies and yes-men. Assassination plots buzzed through the imperial court like flies. And then came the worst humiliation. Commodus announced that he would fight in the arena on New Year's Eve, dressed as a gladiator, to mark the start of a new golden age ruled by himself. Enough was enough. The final conspiracy. By 192 CE, Commodus had alienated almost everyone around him. His political advisors feared for their futures. The Senate seethed with hatred. Even the imperial household was fed up. But the final betrayal came from someone close, his own wrestling coach, Narcissus. Legend says the plot began with Commodus' mistress Marcia, who found herself on a list of people the emperor planned to execute. She joined forces with the chamberlain, the praetorian prefect, and others to stop Commodus before he dragged the empire into complete chaos. First, they tried poisoning his wine. When that didn't kill him, they sent in Narcissus. Death in the bath on December 31st, 192 CE. Commodus relaxed in his bath, perhaps dreaming of his next big appearance in the arena. Narcissus, the man who had trained him in wrestling, entered the room, but not as a coach. In a scene that feels ripped straight from an action movie, Narcissus strangled Commodus in his own bath, ending the reign of the Gladiator Emperor. Just like that, the emperor who wanted to be Hercules died, not in glorious combat, but naked, betrayed, and alone. The aftermath. Commodus' death was greeted with widespread relief. The Senate quickly declared him a public enemy, erased his name from monuments, and restored Rome's dignity, or tried to. But the damage was done. His rule marked the beginning of Rome's slow decline. Though the empire would last for centuries, Commodus' reckless behavior shattered the political stability his father, Marcus Aurelius, had worked so hard to maintain. In many ways, Commodus was a tragic figure, a man born into unimaginable privilege who threw it all away chasing a fantasy. His story remains a cautionary tale about ego, delusion, and the dangers of absolute power. Why we still remember him today, Commodus is remembered as one of Rome's worst emperors and one of its most fascinating. He's appeared in films, books, and TV shows as the ultimate example of an unhinged ruler. His life raises timeless questions. What happens when leaders care more about image than responsibility? What happens when entertainment becomes more important than governance? And how far will people go when no one dares to stop them? Commodus may have wanted to be remembered as a god, a hero, and a champion. But history remembers him as something else, the emperor who mistook the arena for an empire and lost both.